Hello, and welcome to this session from wherever you're joining us today. This is the first day of the summit, and I hope, like me, you've already bookmarked a number of the sessions you'll be joining this week. Myself, I'm personally looking forward to the last session today on the changing payment landscape supported by Barclays Bank, and including the CEO of the Arab Regional System Arab Monetary Fund. Well, the pandemic's accelerated a number of trends, whether it's flexible home working, more local supply chains, or the increased use of technology. Today, we're focusing on digitalisation and what this means for those managing treasury activities, though I guess it can apply more broadly to other parts of the organisation. Now, before we get going, some housekeeping. There's a toolbar at the bottom of your screen near About, Q&A and polls. If you've got any questions, please put them into the Q&A box. They are anonymous, and please put them through during the whole session rather than leaving them to the end. A reminder, this session is being recorded and will be made available for replay on this event platform shortly after the session finishes. And please keep getting involved on social media using LinkedIn and our Twitter feed, #ACTUpdate. Now, before we get started, let me make some introductions. My name is Naresh Agrawal, and after 30 years in Treasury, I now provide policy and technical support here at the ACT. Joining us, we have Alex, who's the Senior Treasury Manager, Middle Office, Cash and Liquidity, for Etihad Airways. We have James, who's the SVP, Group Treasury, Aldar Properties. We have Ruta, who's the Senior Manager at Alpha Term Private Company, and Sherry, who's the Head of Business Development, Transaction Banking at Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank. So, Ruta, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your company, and your IT landscape to get us going?
Yes, hello. Hello, my name is Ruta. I'm a senior manager at Alpha Team Group Treasury, responsible for loan operations and managing structuring debt across the footprint. Over the last 2 years, I have been heavily involved in a treasury digitalization program with respect to borrowings and facilities. Currently, I am managing supply chain financing and cash pooling projects. Headquartered in UAE, Alpha Team Group comprises of more than 200 companies present in Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa. The growth of the company over the past decade in terms of geographical scope posed a real challenge to Alpha Team Group Treasury. We had highly complex manual processes with different banking partners and more than 1,000 accounts, while all treasury activities recorded in Excel. Treasury team decided to embark on a treasury transformation project with implementation of treasury management system with SAP. This project was completed in March here in UAE, and currently we are rolling it out for the rest of the footprint of the group.
Thank you, Ruta. James?
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending where you are. My name is James Finucane. I'm Senior Vice President for Treasury at Aldar Properties. Aldar Properties is one of the leading property developers in the UAE, the largest in Abu Dhabi. We specialize in asset management and development management across a wide range of different business segments. I joined Aldar Properties in June 2020, an interesting time for us all. And I think the key buzzword that I noticed the second I joined was digital transformation. And it was no longer just lip service. This is something we had to do and something we had to rise to the challenge of making sure that our processes could cope with the current pandemic. This is something that's key to everything we do at Aldar and more specifically in Treasury. Like Ruth said, there's a number of areas we're working on. I think she's further along the line in terms of the digital transformation within Treasury. I'm probably beginning this transformation with Aldar. We were heavily reliant on Excel. In the last 6 months, we've probably used quite a lot of APIs to try and improve what we're doing. And now we're looking at a variety of areas around TMSs, APIs, and other digital tools to help us manage the risk within Treasury, but also to help us serve as a support function to the wider business. So delighted to be here today.
Thanks, James. And before we turn to Alex, James, you mentioned APIs. Could you just, for the people who aren't familiar, just 30 seconds on what an API is?
So it's basically a software that integrates any form of digital data and converts it into a useful and easily accessible information that we can use. For our daily cash needs, what we've done is we've developed a robotic process which takes the MT940s from the various banks and converts them into a readable format internally at Aldar. So an in-house solution for our daily cash management.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll come back to the role of APIs, but Alex, turning to you now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Ellis. I head up the cash management and middle office functions here at Etihad, so covering treasury systems and also treasury kind of processes. I've been at Etihad for about 2 years, but previously at smaller real estate firms. So generally with a treasury of 3 to 4 people and probably slightly less demanding environment than Etihad with its global reach. But I'm fortunate when I joined to have inherited a fairly sophisticated treasury system and finance systems with good integration between our ERPs, and our TMS. We have full Swift integration across most of our bank accounts. I think we have roughly 250 to 300 bank accounts globally, so the majority of those are Swift integrated. So we have quite good visibility of our cash at any one time. But there's a lot of work that we're still doing. There's a huge, with James and Ruta, there's a huge program at Etihad across the whole of finance to drive digitization and process improvements through use of technology wherever we can. So it's a big push from our CFO and CEO, and something the airline as a whole focuses on very heavily.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. So it sounds like you've all, I mean, if I listen to treasurers and I think about our catch up earlier, a lot of people spend a lot more time than normal on cash flow forecasting during this period of the pandemic. I'd be interested to hear your experiences. Things like additional board requests, how some of your processes may have changed, how technology supported some of the challenges that you faced. Ruta, maybe I could turn to you first.
Yes. Well, from the start of the pandemic, cash flow forecasting and liquidity management became top priority for Group Treasury and the CFO. Despite having treasury management system in UAE, we still have lots of Excel in other regions and countries. So to consolidate cash flow forecast across more than 150 submission users was becoming a real challenge. We were encountering multiple errors. People were spending time basically just to add up Excel sheets. So we decided to implement a cash flow consolidating tool, which also allows sensitivity analysis. It is called Anaplan. This tool is now heavily used for cash flow forecasting. However, since we still have Excel as an input, we basically spend a lot of time preparing these reports. The reports are usually produced on a bi-weekly basis, so we definitely need to do more in the digitalization to speed up the process.
Okay, thank you. And Alex, how about you? Has cash forecasting evolved with Aldar?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were asking James on me. So yeah, as with everybody else, you know, it's a challenging time, particularly for airlines and retail and real estate. All three of us, unfortunately, in challenging industries. But there has been a huge demand from the business for much more frequent cash flow forecasting. For us, that means more or less having an on-demand cash flow forecast. So it's maintained on a daily basis, and certainly not going to claim that it is fully automated. There is still a lot of Excel usage in there, but we do keep it pretty much live and ready to go at any point. And we find has a very good degree of accuracy. So we obviously leverage a lot of the Swift integration. We leverage data from the TMS, And then what we're finding, so less on the forecasting side, but more of the other cash reports, we're moving from an Excel reporting structure to a finance data warehouse using Power BI or business intelligence tool as a front end. So where we can have data that can come more or less straight out of the system with a little bit of manipulation, there's less objectivity around it, as there is with cash flow forecasting, then we're integrating that into our finance data warehouse tool so that it's available on demand whenever anybody wants, and with a high degree of kind of drill down ability. It's not really a word, but lots of functionality around drilling down to specific countries if you want to find out about our balance in a specific country, for example. I think it would be nice to see a move to more of that on the cash flow forecasting front, but we probably need to work on our forecasting within our TMS or some other system before we can integrate it fully with our finance data warehouse.
Okay, super. And James, I'll give you the opportunity to talk either about Etihad or Aldar.
I think I'll choose Aldar. I know a little bit more about it at this stage. So I think two main points. The first is from a board perspective. What we noticed at the start of the pandemic is straight away cash visibility was key. You had board members, C-suite, concerned about the existence and accuracy of cash, areas which they would have assumed just was done in the past, and now suddenly we were being asked, well, how are we getting these reports in, etc. So that was a key feature, and that's one of the reasons we developed the robotic process that we implemented. I think the other thing to be mindful of is with cash forecasting. I mean, it's great producing a cash forecast, but you need the time to analyze actuals versus forecast, how accurate we're being. I mean, our June forecast, I recall we had 15 different iterations, all of which took a lot of time to consolidate. And then you're looking for the time to actually analyze in September, the 3 months look back. So I think, again, we're looking at digital solutions. We're underway in transforming to a Hyperion system for cash forecasting. Again, this is a long and detailed process, and we're doing it in parallel with Excel, which is quite demanding. But again, it's worth spending the resource now so that we can have a robust system in the future that allows us not just to produce a forecast, but I think more importantly to evaluate how accurate that forecast, to improve it going forward, and ultimately to be able to provide real-time data to management and to our board that also reflects how well we have done in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months, and in the last 9 months in terms of our ability to forecast proper cash movements. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here is to drive visibility and accuracy within the business so that we can make on-time, real-time decisions. And I think that's definitely come out of the pandemic. And I think there are a number of tools that we're looking at now to try and make that more efficient and more accurate going forward.
James, you talked about implementing Hyperion, and I'm guessing that's not a cheap thing to do. Did you find it hard to get the investment dollars? Because I guess there's so much competition at the moment for very scarce investment.
Well, absolutely, and more importantly, there's huge competition for internal resource within our IT department, within budgets, within our chief digital officer. All of this takes time and resource. To be honest, I'm not responsible, fortunately, for the implementation of Hyperion, simply the cash forecasting element of it. But I am trying to look at implementing a TMS. And again, you have to justify it. You have to be able to explain what it's going to do to the business, drive efficiencies among our subsidiaries, help give visibility on cash, and more importantly, provide a risk management tool to both myself, to our CFO and our head of corporate finance and treasury to make on-time decisions that are also aware of the risks around the new realities with COVID, but also with increased speed of digital transformation. We all have to be very, very conscious that all of these DocuSigns, all of these various different technologies we're using do come with risks that we have to be able to evaluate as well.
Thanks, James. Sherry, I've sort of ignored you for a bit, but it'd be really interesting to sort of get a view from you working in a bank of what you're hearing from clients and what the bank is doing to sort of help solve some of these real challenges for treasurers across the region.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically in bank, we are seeing more interest in terms of real-time information, so that as my colleagues have said, so that quicker decisions can be made. They know the positions, and this centres more around the liquidity piece. Obviously, MT940, MT942 serve a purpose and are well integrated into some of the treasury management systems today, but also real-time treasury enables those perhaps that have tighter liquidity positions or don't have so sophisticated positions that they can actually use this information to obtain it through an API. So the banks are heavily investing in terms of their digital technology to enable them to deliver these types of solutions to the client quicker. I think the other thing is, when you move towards a real-time treasury position, as we've said, this will enable quicker decisions to be made. But at the back of that, also you need to make sure that the processes are robust to enable you to act on those positions as well. I think it's important for banks to support in terms of providing all the relevant information to support the cash flow forecasting. We've heard that on today's panel, but also the panel earlier. That's a key objective for many treasurers throughout the region. And it's not just about today, but it's also about what's happening in 3, 6 months, sometimes a couple of years out. I think the other element that we touched upon, and James highlighted, around the reconciliation. So getting the real-time information through the real-time balances and supporting the real-time reconciliation of those pieces as well is vitally important, and also enables quicker investment decisions to be made off the back of that. ADCB has a very good virtual account solution which supports reconciliation and segregation of those reporting elements. And we're seeing a real interest in terms of those kinds of solutions.
Okay, and one of the areas that I'm personally quite interested in is around APIs. James gave us a very quick snapshot of what they are. For people sort of listening in, are they expensive to develop? Do they take a lot of time? What's your experience, Sherry, of how you've seen clients using APIs? Is it something that it's like a big TMS that takes months or years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars?
No, APIs are really just, as we say, a way to transmit information from one place to another. So actually, the API route can be relatively very inexpensive, and also as well, it's quicker. We see these big integrations through host to host. That some, with the file formats and everything like that, that does take months. When you're looking at integration of an API, it's more weeks rather than months. So actually, reality, these things should be cheaper, and also provide you with the timeliness of the information. I think the other benefit of APIs is really about the client being able to get the information when they want it, not when the bank pushes it to them, which also makes clients more self-help and less reliant on the bank in terms of somebody responding or having to push.
Okay, that's great. So I guess thinking back on my own experiences, I could only dial into my bank and pull balances off when the bank said it was ready. And what we're talking about now, I guess, is much more customized around my own working schedule. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Depending on the corporate that you work within, depending on whether you're a regional treasury, a global treasury, or a local treasury, will depend on when you need the information. So it's about also being able to get that information as and when you need it, and timeliness, because again, big decisions are needed off the back of this.
Okay, that's great. So we've talked a fair amount about cash forecasting. I'd like to explore some other areas of digitalisation people invested in. Alex, we talked earlier about sort of some of the invoicing activities going. Could you share some insights around that, where you are on that journey?
Yeah, so first I'll focus on the receivables side. We've worked, as Sherry mentioned, with the virtual accounts. So as you can imagine, Etihad has a huge number of customers. And so what we have done is essentially virtual accounts are a kind of subdivision of a physical bank account. But what it allows you to do is identify single payments very easily. So you give a unique virtual account number to each customer. And when they pay, you can get, using an API or using your TMS, real-time analysis of whether that receipt has come into your bank account. And you will know it's from that customer, irrespective of whether they've appended the invoice number or not. So that's a hugely valuable thing to our receivables team, and it reduces a massive amount of admin, and it's pretty quick and cheap and easy to implement. So that's a fantastic program. On the payable side, I would say it's a bit more challenging because there's a lot more of a human element here, which is difficult to deal with, with technology. So people will sit with invoices on their desks until 2 days before it's due, and you have very little visibility of those invoices. And I think that there was probably less of a focus prior to this pandemic on working capital here at Etihad. That's not to say we didn't produce metrics around it, but I think that when suddenly you saw a big change in the operating environment, it suddenly became clear to a lot of people what DPOs, DSOs, and for an airline, fairly good capital unearned revenue, which is basically tickets that you've been paid for but you have not yet flown. They suddenly became really critical areas to measure. So I think that certainly from my perspective, and I think from the broader Etihad perspective, investing more in measuring those on a more granular basis, and also forecasting them, which is a challenge, is something that Etihad will look at. We have had very, very preliminary discussions, but not begun implementing yet on potentially using artificial intelligence to forecast our receivables and payables on a more granular level, because there's such a huge amount of data that it's not easy to do using humans. But I think that's early days, and my personal view is that receivables will be much more easy to implement that kind of artificial intelligence, and especially regression analysis to forecast what will happen in the future, than payables, because there is less of a human element. You know when your invoice has been issued, and that's very clear, and you can then hopefully, based on your history, forecast out with this huge amount of data when you'll be getting your cash in.
Turning to you, Ruto, I know, again, you talked about the sort of size and scope of the organisation and sort of various geographies you operate in. Could you share some of the challenges you're facing as well as cash forecasting?
Yes, as part of the digitalization program that we started a couple years back, we implemented technology that basically allows us to see our cash. So basically now at the push of a button, Group Treasury and the CFO can see cash pockets located in the different regions and different locations. So basically, this allows us to make much more sophisticated decisions in terms of the cash pooling and the movement of cash and offsetting the interest. So to build on that, we have also started working on the SWIFT, and basically the end result or our vision is to implement Treasury Center here in UAE that will consolidate all the treasury activities, which are currently maybe decentralized in different divisions. Sort of a separate project that we did, we implemented a data visualization tool, because now we have all these systems and we still have Excel. So we need somehow to produce management reports that would be, produced on a regular basis and wouldn't take so much time. So we have implemented a Tableau as basically a solution that pulls information from different systems and allows us sort of regular reporting without us spending too much time on it.
And is Tableau a bit like Alex referred to earlier around Power BI? Are these the sort of similar tools, do we think?
To be honest with you, by the sounds of it, it sounds very similar.
Okay, and we've got quite a few questions. I want to sort of focus on some of the questions we're getting coming in. But just in terms of cost and time it takes to implement it, Alex and Ruth, could you share some insights to people listening in on how long and how much it took to implement some of these data visualization tools, which for me sound really exciting, really valuable?
I mean, look, from the Etihad perspective, I think it's, sorry, rewind. I think that there's, it's going to be as time consuming and as expensive as the functionality that you're looking for. So you could start, I started building some Power BI dashboards based off our existing Excels on my own fairly early on, because I wanted to try it out and develop some skills using it. And beyond paying for the license, that's not an expensive thing to implement. However, for the group finance function, the whole group finance function, covering financial reporting, financial planning, our finance business partners and treasury, the decisions was made at Etihad to implement a data warehouse, which is essentially a central repository of information, which takes data from a number of different sources, but chief amongst them are ERP and our TMS, but also from things like we have a fuel management system which manages the fuel our aircraft are burning, all sorts of different data sources, put it into a single kind of library of data. And then you can leverage that library to build specific reports based on what your management or boards need to see. So that has been quite an extensive program. It's been done in stages. I would say the focus to begin with has been on historic data because it's slightly easier to build. But we are now, I think, on our sixth drop, we call them, or a sixth kind of separate set of dashboards for that. Treasury was the second. And it's functioning very well. No doubt forecasting is still a challenge, but I think we're moving towards that. But in terms of time, I joined Etihad 2 years ago, and as I said, I was interested in the BI. I do believe that it's probably the future of treasury reporting and finance reporting, and began kind of having a go at building some myself. But we're 2 years in now, and we're pretty well advanced on this group finance dashboard and data warehouse solution. So it's quite quick. There has definitely been an investment because we have used some consultants to assist with that program.
Okay, very good. I'm interested. You said you managed to sort of write some of your Power BI yourself, which I guess says something about how either complex or how smart you are, or a combination of both. Ruth, what's your own experiences around Tableau?
Well, in terms of Tableau, to implement it, it's not very complicated because you basically get a license. However, as Alex mentioned, basically to develop these reports, you need someone who knows how to use the software. So we actually have team in IT who basically help us to develop these dashboards and graphs. So we basically submit our Excel sheets and they create whatever we basically were doing in Excel. However, on a regular basis, this information is flowing from the system or maybe even linked to some Excel inputs. But basically that is speeding up the process substantially. I would say maybe in terms of the challenge, we had encountered some challenges that, some more complicated calculations that we were doing on interest forecasting and stuff. Those areas were a bit sort of challenging to implement, but then we found the solution.
Okay, very good. And we've got some questions coming in. I'm not sure we'll get all of them, but I'm going to just pick on a couple now. First of all, this says, how do you incorporate input from different sources, either multiple ERPs, Excel, and have a consolidated view while still being able to drill down to the details? Can I ask a couple of you, James, you're nodding, sort of share how you do that?
I mean, if I knew how to do it, I'd be a very happy man. At the moment, Aldar Properties has multiple business units, from malls to hotels, golf clubs, asset management, development management businesses, all feeding information up to headquarters here in Aldar. We also have each of those individual entities have different ERPs from Oracle, AP, a lot of them using Excel still. So it is the main challenge. And to be honest, we're looking at a TMS solution or or APIs to try and cope with this multitude of different data inputs. And I think that is where we are today. As we look at the TMSs, we're not trying to take something off a shelf and make it fit into what we do. We're looking at what we do today, how we can improve things at the subsidiary levels, but also how can we use what we have in-house, bring in external resource and try and have the best solution for our business, which is going to be very different from Ruta and from Alex. And we work with Sherry and ADCB and our other banking partners to try and get their opinion on what works best and how can they integrate with us as well. Because remember, each of the different hosts, each of the different banks have different systems as well. So I think before you start on the TMS journey or on a Hyperion or very, very large IT solutions, have a think about what's coming up from the business, what's coming up from your finance manager out in one of your regional offices. Make sure that this is all going to be able to interact. And I think that's a really good question. I think it's something we all need to do before we set out on these things, rather than trying to fix the problem after we've created a very fancy TMS at the headquarter level.
Sherry, I can see you nodding a lot. Can I bring you in and sort of share what you sort of hear, and also as a bank, how you're helping people in the space?
No, absolutely, and I agree with everything James is saying. I think the challenge for banks is really just to understand the problem that the client is trying to solve, and to sit with them and work through that. And sometimes it's just working within phases to fix the ultimate. It's also about really understanding the legacy in terms of the systems that they have, and how you can support as a bank in terms of the reporting elements that you may need to give, the whole integration. So I recognise the challenges, and this is across multiple industries and across multiple treasurers that we face. So really, from an ADCB perspective, it's about sitting down, reviewing, understanding the problem, and then working on the solutions to help support them to get the information and the integration that is needed. I think the other part is, it's not about using every single piece of technology that's out there. It's just about understanding it and then seeing what is viable for your business today, as well as part of your digitalisation strategy as you move forward into the next couple of years.
Very good. And I think, I spent 9 years at PwC. One of our mantras was around simplification and standardization. And I think for what it's worth, just listening to Sherry and James as well, I think part of the challenge is around how do you simplify and standardize your business operations so that you're then not working with a whole host of different types of reporting systems, but it's really getting those right at the granular level, right at the bottom. How do you make sure you can pull on that data so you can then drill down right at the top? And just talking about data, one of the other questions we have is around cash visibility and MT940s. A lot of you work have multiple jurisdictions reporting into you. And the question is, for those people who have countries where sending an MT940 is still not the norm, or even if you get it, it's not consistent, could you just share very briefly, because we've only got about 5 minutes, do you use a SWIFT bureau? How do you aggregate this? Do you work with the banks? How do you manage such a wide variety of data sources?
Yeah, I say Etihad uses a SWIFT. Yeah, Etihad uses a SWIFT bureau, and I guess we're fortunate, timing-wise, we're fortunate in allocation here in that we're kind of in the center of our operations. So we find that generally when we don't have out-of-date SWIFT messages, but the SWIFT bureau works fantastically. There's a bit of integration steps on day one for the TMS, but I would say it's a day's work maximum, and less if it's a bank an account at a bank with which we already have SWIFT messaging set up. On our EMS, I think it takes a bit longer because you have to map to your geos all the different transaction types that you get from your MT940s, and that does vary still from bank to bank. So that can take a bit longer from my experience, up to a month.
And James, do you use what do you use to collect MT9 forces at the moment?
So we have a process, a robotic process that we do every day. We're fortunate in that all of our bank accounts, almost all, are located in the UAE, so that the multi-jurisdiction issue isn't a problem for us. I think Ruta probably would have more experience in that.
Yes, we are also using MT940s here in UAE, but we have locations such as Egypt, Pakistan, Africa. So definitely those cash balances are not coming from MT940s. We are basically using Excel, which is being populated by the group treasurers or finance managers in those locations, and they get sent over to UAE. We have developed a sort of in-house consolidation tool that is basically allows us to see basically the cash balances. So yeah, a bit of technology and a bit of Excel.
Okay, and Sherry, what's your thoughts? What guidance would you provide to people listening in today who have similar challenges as Ruta? A lot of different countries with different degrees of maturity around using Swift and MT9 forces.
I think it's just about understanding the capabilities of what the banks can provide. I think, MT940 is a standard message, but actually MT940s in different banks have different standards. So it's also about understanding that. I think it's also about, where some banks have legacy systems so that you can log in online to see your positions. So I think it's truly about a bit of an amalgamation as banks step up their digitalisation programs, because that in itself is a big element of development for many banks, not just locally, but also globally, and some are further ahead than others. So I think it's really down to the treasurers to understand in terms of what those banks can provide. And also I think the other element is for them to push their banks into the new era of technology and support them as well in terms of working through that, and to apply some gentle pressure to banks as well to enable them to step up as well.
Very good. It's good to hear a bank talking about applying a bit of pressure to the banks themselves. I'm sort of very conscious of only about less than 3 minutes. So we don't have much left before we finish. Can I ask for 30 seconds from Alex, James, and Ruta around what you would recommend to people listening to this session today? Alex?
I mean, I think that with the changing nature that we've covered on this panel, the changing nature of technology requirements and the demands from a business, I do think it's critical for people starting out in their treasury career to consider the skills they need. I remember, it's still the case that a key thing on any treasurer CV is Excel skills. But I do think that sooner or later, code writing and particularly business intelligence skills are going to start approaching and potentially overtaking Excel skills. Unless you're in a big business where you can have a different department or an IT department deal with those things on your behalf. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes over the next few years. But I think BI is probably here to stay and will be used more and more heavily.
Okay, James, 30 seconds.
I can do it quicker. If you're going to implement any treasury solutions, get onto your colleagues in the ACT, talk to your peers in other companies. That has been a huge find for me, and it has been so useful. So use the resources here. We're all working together in this new age, and we have to learn from each other as well.
That's great. Thanks, James.
Yes, I would say that more technology is definitely required. I think that, focusing on different systems and implementing them, that allows businesses to save time. So definitely on top of good people, you need some technological solutions. Moving away from Excel slowly.
Excellent.
Sherry, you've got 20 seconds left.
Okay, from my side, I think it's don't try and fix all the problems at once. Work through, make conscious decision in terms of your digitalisation program, and stick with it. And as you say, use your colleagues around you to gain that relevant experience and ask the relevant questions as well to support you.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry we're going to rush to the end, but don't forget you can watch this session again. Look at everything else going on in the virtual exhibition hall. Please do complete the survey at the end. And finally, thank you, Ruta, Alex and James and Sherry, and to ADCB for supporting this session. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.